Welcome back to another Waynos Fotos video. And yes, Durianrider has been really given Specialized a real roasting. First off, he started with roasting the S-Works Epic Brain. And I don't know how many times he changed that thing out and got a replacement and just couldn't get it to work. And then Specialized came back by taking down his Instagram channel. Well, anyway, DR's back at it again, and he's just bought himself a S-Works SL7 Tarmac, and he's roasting that one. So what's this all about? Let's find out if he's got a point after we roll that intro. Well, Durianrider claims that his rim brake bike is 9 seconds faster over 10 minutes than his Specialized SL7 Tarmac disc 2021 model. Now, let's just have a look at the first thing. Now, the first thing that was different about these bikes is that the disc brake bike is wider in the rear end. It's 5mm wider because a rim brake is 130 and a disc brake is 135 to accommodate that extra disc. And what that actually does is it's two things it does. First of all, it makes it wider, so when you're actually riding the bike, you're getting more flex because there's more leverage because they're further out. So the frame is going to flex more underneath you than a rim brake bike. Now, we're talking about small differences, but it does make a difference of transmitting the force of your pedaling to the rear wheel. Now, the other thing that can be affecting as well, because now that this cassette is sitting further out on the bike, your train line of the chain could be slightly different. And I mean, I know this is probably really talking about minute differences, but the chain line could be not quite as efficient as it was when he was riding in the same gear on the actual rim brake bike. So it might be actually slightly less losses. So there we've got two factors there. We've got the wider back end, and we've also probably got the efficiency of the drivetrain. Now, moving to the front part of the bike, we actually have a different number of spokes. So if you're on a rim brake bike, normally you've got about an 18 spoke, sometimes 16 spoke, we'll just call it 18 spokes that you would have on a rim brake wheel compared to a 24 spoke, which is pretty typical. Some of them have 21, which have the fulcrum and the Campagnolo. They like to do the 21 spoke with the 7 and 14 difference between the cross spoking and the radial. But generally, a lot of the wheels that have 24 spoking compared to 18 spokes. So you've got more spokes. Now, a spoke going through the air actually creates drag. And as you get more spokes, the actual drag starts to go exponentially. Now, if you haven't watched my other video on that, just check that out up here and go and have a look at that, and I'll explain that in detail. But basically, more spokes is less aero, so you're getting more drag. Now we actually have the brake components themselves. Now, on a rim brake bike, you have a caliper that's sitting up the top here that sits on top of the wheel. Now, what actually happens, I explained this in that video that actually, linked above before. What happens is because the top of the wheel is going twice the speed of the bicycle, it's creating a lot of turbulence in the air, and that dirty air is hitting that rim caliper that's on the top of the wheel. So it's not actually creating much drag because it's in dirty air. Now, when you move to a disc brake bike, the disc is actually on the side of the wheel, and that's actually spinning in the air, and the top of the disc is doing about 30% faster speed than the actual bicycle. So you've actually got something that's got holes in it, and quite often they have a serrated edge on top, causing a lot of drag. Plus you have the caliper at the back that is designed in no aero function whatsoever. So this is all creating extra drag, as well as the spokes creating extra drag on the front wheel. So the front part of the bike, which actually is the most important when it comes to drag, is significantly more. And then we have the most obvious difference, which Durianrider pointed out very, very clearly. He can't dispute this. He weighed the Merida bike and he weighed the SL7 Tarmac, and the weight difference was about 1 kilo. One was about 7.5 and his Merida was about 6.5. And he even actually tried to trim the weight out of the disc brake bike, but it still maintained that kilo difference. So, you just can't get disc brakes, like for like. You just can't get them down to the same weight as a rim brake bike. So, you're actually hauling along, in general, between 0.5 kilo and 1 kilo of extra bike when you go to a disc brake bike. Well, in conclusion, I think that Durianrider did a pretty fair test here. If you actually go and watch that video that I linked earlier, you can go and see that he tried to keep the test as even as possible. There was some variables because he didn't do them on exactly the same day, but the winds were different. But it was against him when he was actually on the rim brake bike. So, you know, he gave the wind favour to the disc brake bike. He also weighed every sync individually, and he weighed the bikes. He also changed out components to make them the same. He put on the same chain rings, he used the same chain, he used the same cassette, and he really tried to minimise the differences that may come into it. And he even took his jersey off. I don't know if that makes any difference, to give the disc brake bike a little bit more aero. But yeah, I think he did a pretty fair job. Now, I know a lot of people find him a bit of confrontational, a bit of a colourful character, and can be a bit polarising at times. But I think in this case here, he did a pretty fair analysis. And yeah, you know, I'm a technical guy myself, and I can't really see anything obvious that that he did which would favour the rim brake bike. Well, anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it. And yeah, leave your comments down below if you're a fan of Durianrider or not, or if you think his test was fair or not fair. Just leave that down below. Maybe you picked up something that I didn't see, but yeah, I thought it was a pretty fair comparison, and it just goes to show that you know, not always newer is better. Okay, guys, catch you next vid. Cheers.